morning and welcome to the CBI's SME Webinar. My name is Deborah Fraser and I'm Director for Regions, and we're delighted to be doing today's session with our partners from Marsh Commercial. Now, today's in the morning, we're going to be picking the brains of Anthony Gruppo, who is CEO of Marsh Commercial, and Rich Bishop, who is CEO of Orcus. We're going to be talking about effective leadership and really how to embed that into your business, which is pretty critical at this moment. So hopefully today's session is an opportunity for you to take the time out and sharpen the axe rather than frustratedly keep chopping down those trees. The format of the session is as normal. We'll hear from both of our speakers in turn, and then we'll open things up on the chat box. So please do start going into the chat box and sending in your questions, and we can put those to Anthony and Rich once we've heard from both of them speak. But first up, we have Anthony from Marsh, who is not just UK CEO, but he is also an author and penned the book 6 Degrees of Impact, which you can get on Amazon. But because Anthony's very kind, we're going to be sending a digital copy to all of you after today's session. Now, it really looks at those six elements of leadership, whether it's R&D through to innovation, and really how to make genuine impact in terms of your business, but also your personal growth as well as your professional growth. But I won't talk anymore because we've actually got the expert on the line. So I'll pop myself onto mute, Anthony, and hand over to you.
Deborah, thank you, and congratulations, CBI. What a fantastic organization since I've come to know you, and what an integral part you play in our economy and advising to businesses. So well done to CBI. Well, let's in the next 10 minutes, let's try to cover some things that I think will help you and be impactful. You know, I will tell you that right now as leaders, whether you're looking after smaller businesses or larger ones, you have what it takes to achieve a level of greatness. Greatness is always defined when people duplicate what you started. So you are now at a point, if you think about as you lead businesses and families and careers and look after colleagues and communities and clients, that we now stand at a very important place. We stand on both a threshold, excuse me, a threshold and a crossroads. So let's define it. Let's go through 6 quick areas and see how we can blend together both personally and professionally how to achieve, how to lead, and how to get the outcomes you're looking for. The first thing we'll talk about, the first impact zone, is really leadership. And I will tell you that my recent book, Pushes the Possible, where I profiled leaders who came from nothing. These are the people that no one thought could succeed. They came from, some of them, abject poverty, physical disability, all kinds of struggles economically, yet they were able to achieve a level of greatness. And what was the common thread? The common thread among them was, one of the strongest was humility. And they seek to be servant leaders. So as we think about leadership, let's think about in our role, because we all just rent our position, right? Even as a CEO of Marsh Commercial, I serve 2,400 clients and hundreds of thousands of clients all over the United Kingdom. And every day you have to think of yourself as a servant to all those different people and quadrants. So define yourself in a servant leadership role, first impact zone, and then try to extend that to your culture. Now, what's important is the marketing, and we all see really bad examples of it, don't we? We see it on social media. We see it where we think that if we pout our lips in a kissing format, raise our right leg so that we look 10 pounds trimmer, and we all try to exhibit the same, brand on social media. That's not exactly what we're talking about. So when you think about marketing, think about what your personal brand is that you're trying to convey and that of your organization. And as we work with a lot of brilliant young professionals, know that part of their passion is to be able to include what's important to them inside the organizational structure. And we can do that now, can't we? We can look at a joint marketing venues for both individuals and organizations to send a good cultural message. This is one time when humanity stands at both the threshold and the crossroad to that level of greatness. So the marketing, to be consistent, to make sure that passion and potential increases performance, and to give a good look of how and what you're trying to become from a servant standpoint. let's jump to resources for a moment. And when you think about resources, think about it both internally and externally. In organizations, you hear all the time, and people say, we don't have enough resources. Well, you know what? I've never had enough resources. I was told, that I was going to be, that too bald, too ugly, and came from too small a town in America. So, but yet we still have to overcome those things. So we always have the resources we need if we put the people we need into a strategic sessions and planning. When you deliver goals, objectives, actions, and strategies, and you disseminate that among all the people that want to be interested, you never have to carry the burden alone. So whether you're a small business or a big business, the pattern of 6 degrees of impact is identical. So think about the internal and external resources. If you are a small organization and you don't necessarily have a board of directors, you can still create one. You can still reach out through social media and other places and invite people to be an advisor and a guide for both yourself as an individual leader and that as an organization. This is not a preview for the privileged. This is not something that has to be bought and ascertained by many years of capital raising. It can be done today, right now. So let's talk about the 4th degree, strategic position. What kind of strategy are you implementing and what position are you trying to get to? Don't think in terms, if you can for a moment, about short and long term. Envision your strategy as far as you can see. If you can see for generations, then you go ahead and plan that way. But never build your strategy so tight, so inflexible that you can't move to opportunities as they come. We hear the term CEO, Chief Executive Officer. What nonsense! It came from the military, right? It's a corporate title. And if I try to explain it to my oldest granddaughter, Ansley Jane, who's 12 and autistic, I'm pretty sure she's not going to understand what a Chief Executive Officer is. But I tell you what, the girl can understand is that, can you coach yourself and others? Can you be entrepreneurial in how you think? And can you act like an owner? That's a CEO. So I will tell you that if Ansley was on my podcast, The Roots of Leadership, years ago. She's still the 3rd most downloaded session because here's looking through a child's lens, how she sees us and the world of leadership. So right now, we have I have 4 minutes and 10 seconds left because I know Deborah. I set a timer on myself because I know how she is. So she'll give me that gong. So what we do is that, if you think about it, is don't lose that childlike behavior inside yourself. Don't lose that energy. Don't lose that passion. Don't let the world dictate how you have to operate, because at that point you get to the 5th level of impact, and that's research and development. Always be a lifetime learner. What can you research and develop differently? You know organizations that the first thing when things go a little south financially, they pull the R&D budget. That's the worst thing you can do. As a leader, always be studying, be eclectic, study areas that maybe are foreign to you. I don't care if it's econometricians or whatever it might be, is study venues around the world that matter, because the more well-rounded we are, that's a better example we set for our colleagues and for our company's culture. So R&D, think about what's important. And finally, the last piece is outcomes. Determine how you're going to measure outcomes. Is it critically important, isn't it, to be diverse and inclusive? Think about that. Diversity generates diversity of thought. Diversity of thought generates better outcomes. And as we look to this, play in an arena where you are the minority, so that go to those places and opportunities where it's a stretch for you. It's not culturally what you're used to. And that's how you expand as a business owner, a leader, a mindset, and any role you serve on the planet. Think about outcomes, whether it's margin or net operating income, but have a common goal. And finally, build that strategic plan. As I said, goals, action strategies, and tasks. Share it with every colleague. Let people own it, not just those that are close to you, that are the leadership team, but everyone. Because the level of greatness, as I said in the beginning, comes when people duplicate what you started. How could you have been great if after you leave the game and all of a sudden everybody takes down what you built and restarts it? That's not greatness, that's just taking up space. So I will tell you that the energy of life, that push and that passion, the pushers of the possible, I've been graced to know, the greats that I've able to meet and serve with, they just never saw any barrier. They only saw bridges. They never backed up. They just continued to push forward. And that's you. That is you. So we spent 10 minutes together, but I've known you all my life. You're the overachievers. You're the ones that make a difference. So I ask you, as I leave you today, and hopefully we'll be later on questions, is what matters to you? Are you truly a servant leader? And if you are, and I believe you are, then go get it. Thank you. Deborah, over to you.
Thank you, Anthony. That was really, really very inspiring. And I know I've taken a couple of bits out. I like that bit about yeah, never get it's that never get old, isn't it? Always have fun with everything you're doing, and yeah, keep looking for the opportunities. Right, Rich, over to you.
Wow.
So Rich, yeah, Rich is an entrepreneur and business owner. I think since left school,
Yeah.
always has been pushing your boundaries and setting up and looking to get your businesses to grow. Also been, I think, a chair of the FSB, one of CBI's great friends, the FSB. And really what we're keen to do today is hear about your experiences of leadership and the core elements of success as you see them.
Yeah, and I really wish I wasn't following Anthony now with that. That was incredibly inspirational, and I've taken notes as well during that. So no, thank you for that. And no, great to be here. And just to echo what Anthony was saying, actually, on behalf of an SME owner who's a CBI member, it's fantastic that the CBI do things like this on behalf of its members and share this best practice and get people like Anthony to come talk to lowly people like me. So I'm going to talk about sort of my experience and how I've seen leadership in various different ways. So you mentioned that I started my business straight from school. So I started when I was 16, but in fact my leadership journey, if you like, started even earlier than that. So at 13 years of age, I put my hand up and volunteered for the school council. And straight away I was the representative of my form group in that school council. Then went on to become the vice chair, then became the chair, then became the senior prefect of that school, which was about a kind of level of head boy, if you like, if you think about English school levels. And so right from a very early age, right from my formative sort of teenage years, I was already in the position where I was managing projects, managing people, managing expectations, showing that leadership. As Anthony said, you can be measured by your changes that you made that were still there. And to this day, the uniform of my school is still the same as I left it, because I changed it from the shirt, tie and woolly jumper to a much more comfortable sort of polo shirt and sweater instead. And again, it's those things where you make that lasting difference by doing that. So that pattern's followed me throughout my entire life. As I say, when I left that school, I became self-employed and set up my own business. But I was still at sixth form and doing part-time jobs and things like that as well. And that pattern continued. And at 17 years of age, I was a Saturday temp at the ill-fated Index catalogue shop, if anyone remembers the Littlewoods Index. And at 17 years of age, with only 6 months experience in retail, unfortunately, the business was announced that it was going to be liquidated and closed down. And when the managers who were actually trained and experienced these kind of things got busy because of all the paperwork they now had to deal with, they chucked 17-year-old me the store keys, gave me all the passwords to everything and went, you go run it. Much, I should say, to the yeah, lots of issues with existing members of staff. I'm going to be very careful how I put that, because they kind of looked at me going, who's this guy? Especially because I was riddled with acne and didn't really have as much confidence as I do now and things like that. So, but that kind of said to me from an early age that actually I'm seen as a safe pair of hands. I'm seen as someone who can lead a team even without that sort of formal training. And I've been through some of that formal training since, and obviously, as you mentioned, grown my own business and helped others to grow theirs as well. And that's 17 years now of doing that since I became self-employed, but 20 years of sort of being a leader, if you like, in some guise or another. And through that time, I've seen very much the good, the bad, and the ugliest of sort of leadership styles through that time. And to summarize them, I guess, to say that the best I've seen, the good, is that thing about full autonomy of teams, where teams trust you and you trust them, and they're able to go and do what they need to do. And as Anthony said, you become the higher up in the hierarchy, you become more servant to that team on the front line. You are there to enable them to go do what they do. You're there to set the resources in place to make sure that your frontline staff, who you have employed to do this as a specialist in their area, they're the ones who you are empowering to do. And I've seen that, and I've been in organizations like that, and they're fantastic. I've also seen the bad, which would be an organization I was in once where the managing director would literally stop talking to an individual, not even say hello, the day they handed their notice in. And so the day they handed their notice in, they were dead to him. That was it. He would pass them on the stairs and just look away. And just the messages that gives of the thing of, if you're not 100% loyal to me, I will dismiss you. Straight away, it just ripples through the rest of the team. They now know that they are very sort of disposable, and they're not cared for in the same way. Right through to a fairly recent incident where I was listening into a call where a chairman, a vice chair, and a CEO of an organisation were sat looking at the dictionary definition and explaining the dictionary definition of the word consultation, and spent half an hour explaining that they didn't ask for the opinions that were being given because they never asked for consultation. Now, if you're going to waste half an hour discussing the opinions that have been brought to the table. You don't waste that half an hour battling everyone with a stick to try and enforce the rule. And so there are lots of different types of leadership, and some of these are about personality, but as Anthony said, actually a lot of it is just about learning sort of the techniques of things you need to do. It's all within us to be able to do this. It's just learning the tricks that work for you, that make you think differently. And I'm not saying tricks as in to hide behind things, but just the little things that remind you need to think differently. Deborah, I think you said about sharpening the saw. I've actually got COVID 7 habits on a little post-it next to me over here, just because every now and again I have to just remind myself what I'm meant to be doing. And Anthony, I'm sure I'll be gleaning the chapters out of your book as well and putting them right next to them. But it's about sort of learning those things that you should learn. And I would say that's kind of my biggest sort of takeaways from looking at all sorts of different types of leadership and my own, which is do more listening, do more reading, do more learning than you do anything else, because there is so much you don't know. And in fact, there's a fantastic book I read many years ago called Wikinomics. And it's all about the idea that actually to solve a problem, it is very unlikely you have it within yourself to do it, and it's very unlikely you have it within your team to do it. There are 7 billion people in the world. It's more likely that the answers are out there than they are in the room you're in right now, from a statistical point of view. So standing there assuming that you know everything and you're right all the time is just not going to get you very far at all. So spend more time listening, spend more time learning, and only then can you really make that sort of fully informed decisions that you need to make as a leader. Be honest, be trustworthy. When you get things wrong, admit it. Say that you got it wrong. Say you've changed your mind. Say something else came along and now you've changed your mind, and be honest about that. Because the worst thing you can do is, I had this thought on day one. I've been presented with hundreds of pieces of evidence to the contrary. I'm sticking with it because that's what I said. No, if you want people to trust you and feel that you're being honest with them, you need to be human. You need to know they make mistakes all the time. They need to know that you're happy making mistakes. And sometimes they're big mistakes and that's horrible and you have to do an awful lot of apologizing. Sometimes they're tiny little ones, but by admitting that you may have got it wrong, you're able to regain the trust and bring people back on board. And do that publicly. I mean, not necessarily sort of on the TV news, but do it amongst your team. So your team know that is the culture that they've got. They don't have to be scared about making a mistake, because the guy at the top and everyone down makes mistakes. Therefore, you can make those mistakes and feel comfortable in it. And I think over the last 12 months especially, I think the human element has really come through in leadership. And we've gone from lots of organizations saying work from home can never work, especially in sort of industries around sort of like legal and accounting and things like that. It would never work working from home. Then a law was passed and we all had to. And all of a sudden, we miraculously found ways of doing it within 24 hours. And I've heard amazing stories around people not having to put requests in for flexible working practices anymore because they've got it by default at home. So people are coming back off parental leave earlier. People aren't taking sick days and staying out of the office because they're able to just do enough to keep things ticking over. And from a leadership point of view, leadership has changed from you're not in at 8:31, where have you been, to actually checking in with your staff and seeing how they're doing. What do they need more from you? Have you got the right equipment? Have you got the right headset for the calls? Have you got a comfortable chair? And actually, I think we've been forced into a position over the last 12 months where leaders have had to think about things differently. And just as Anthony said, it's about the servant mentality for you and your team. What does your organization need? What do your members of staff need? What do your customers need? And you're there to make that work for them. If you're stood at the top and you're barking orders and you're just saying it's my way or the highway, you lose everybody and people will move on and go elsewhere. If you really want to retain the talent and really want to retain your customers, you need to just be human and be able to sort of empower them and be able to sort of get them to tell you what they need so that you can do your job better. I hope that's okay. I don't think I've got a book in it, unlike Anthony, but I think there's some in there, hopefully.
I think you are a book, Rich. I think you are a book.
Yeah, you're very engaging, and I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was build a team strong enough that no one knows who the boss is, which I try to. I'm very fortunate. I've got a fantastic team. Now we've got some comments coming in and questions coming in, but actually there's a lovely comment that's coming from Yunus who says, "I'm captain of my ship. I'm very hungry for knowledge." So with that point, actually, I'm going to ask one of the questions that has also come in, but maybe you can answer it right at the end. Recommendation, your top recommendation for a book and podcast. So if I can give you that to think about, and then you can maybe sort of give that to, but you only can give one on each of those. Right, so we've got a few questions coming in. We've got one from Simon who asks, what do you think about a blame-free culture that fosters continuous improvement and believes in a one-team approach across disciplines? So Anthony,
Yeah,
I might
Rich, you
come
want me
to
to?
you first, if that's okay.
Sure. Thanks, Deborah. Look, anytime we're talking about blame, it's based in insecurity and lack of confidence. And then it becomes a very punitive environment. So a leader, I'll give you a quick soundbite, is easier. A leader should always take less than their share of the credit. And when things go wrong, it's on them. Otherwise, it's pointing fingers at who. Blame cultures will create a very weak result.
Yeah,
I
agree with that entirely.
Yeah, I'd say 100% agree. And the same organisation I was in where the MD would blank people once they handed their notice in, everybody was scared to make a decision at every single level, because if it went wrong, they took the hit for it. If it went right, the MD took the credit. And what it meant was the organisation just stagnated and stagnated. And 6 months after I stopped working with them, they got bought up by somebody else because they just could not continue operating as they were. The model there was a bit toxic, really. So people felt trapped in what they were doing and trapped by making a decision. So actually empowering people to make those mistakes, give them the credit when it goes well, and share it if it's a team effort, right? Don't just give it all away, but you're doing it as a team. So no, I think foster that kind of environment and you'll have a much happier team and achieve so much more together.
Thank you. Right, there's one here around, I suppose it's more around hybrid working, and so the current, as people are wrestling with this. There's a question around how do you offer employees flex whilst remaining commercially successful and productive? So Rich, maybe I can come to you first, and then Anthony, give you a bit of thinking and come to you next.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's how you measure what good looks like and what metrics you put in place and things like that. I was on a call the other day with a CEO who's built this big company, and it's from the ground up. It was all around social good and looking after the staff, and it was always this whole culture of me as a CEO. I'm here to make sure everyone else can do what they need to do. And he was saying about the fact that they set targets on projects, on pieces of work, which are how many things go out the door, how much time is being spent on it, etc. And only at the point that anything moves out of those target areas does anyone else ever get involved in the project. You've got full autonomy as a project manager to go do that thing, as long as you stick within a wide range of those targets and wide range of metrics. And what that allows you to do then is it doesn't matter where they are. It doesn't matter if they're sat at the desk or they're sat at a coffee shop. It also often doesn't matter if they're working at 9 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock in the morning to fit around what they need to do. And if you measure the output of what people are doing rather than the time they spend doing it, you can have a much easier time of managing flexibility. And again, it shows that trust in staff. It shows that trust in people to say, I trust you to go do this thing. Here's how we're going to measure it, because we still need to measure something. But here's how we're going to measure it. Go do it how you want, where you want, within the set of parameters we've given you.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's look at it from four components for a moment. Work from anywhere is here to stay. I really pray that it is. We have a lot of single parents. We have a lot of colleagues that look after their aging parents. We have, let's take women, for example, who at the top of their career have to leave their career because they have to take care of their parents. Because a lot of times, unfortunately, it falls on the woman partner. This is a tragedy. So this now gives us an opportunity to retain our best talent. And as Rich said, the flexibility is incredible. Now, there are dinosaurs out there. Let's be direct on this. There are dinosaurs out there as leaders who believe that they have to thumb down people, and if they can't see them, they're not working. Oh, guess what? An underachiever will beat you no matter what the environment is, whether they're in the office or working from home. If they're an underachiever and they're out to beat you and expand time to fill work, they're going to do it no matter what it is. So when you walk past their terminal and you see their screen change, you know they've been on Amazon shopping for shoes. You think that's going to change whether they're at home or at work? Oh, come on. So the reality is that we have to be flexible, and the office, the physical environment will become a place of training and collaboration, and where people have to meet because new colleagues have to be trained. But we'll have to give, and we must give, flexibility to staff to be able within their teams, among their leaders, because as I said, I serve 2,400 colleagues. We can't have a one size fits all. So you have to trust your leaders in your team that they'll work to be productive, work within the strat plan and the outcome deliverables that I talked about, and work with their people to be flexible. But of course, the office has to still maintain as a hub for training and collaboration, but we can certainly work around this. We've proven we can. But please don't think for 1 minute that because you put everybody back in office, all of a sudden productivity is going to go up, because they'll beat you no matter where if that was their intent, and the overachiever will overachieve no matter where they're sitting.
I think productivity will dip when we're allowed back in the offices, because we're all going to bounce around being so excited to see each other, aren't we? We're going to get nothing done for those first few days as we're all just like, hello, hello. Right. There's a question here which sort of, I suppose, is COVID related, but actually very much applicable in sort of the future world and the past world. How do you keep teams motivated? But both now, but also when you hit obstacles. So when you've had that sucker punch, how do you pick yourself up and dust yourself off and get the teams back motivated? So Anthony, I'm going to come to you first, if that's all right.
The essence of motivation always is and always has been getting people to care. We've proven that money is not a motivator. It's a way people keep score. That people leave because usually they dislike working for their direct supervisor or manager, or the culture of the organization. So to get people to care, you have to give them transparency and direct communication on what, as an organization and people, we're trying to achieve. And you can't tinker. You can't start left, yank them right. You got to give them a consistent path and an honest path. When the pandemic started, I installed a second line here in my residence here in London for colleagues to call in the evening to talk about whatever they wanted to talk about. And it exploded. And we run leadership labs where we run scenarios and people can talk about anything they want. And when we have monthly calls with thousands of people, they can ask any question, because a lot of organizations filter it, or they say, go ahead and submit your question, but some comms expert buries it. So once you become transparent and honest and people get to care, then motivation is sustained.
Thank you. Rich, got anything else you'd like to add to that?
I was going to say, I absolutely agree. And so a lesson I learnt the hard way many years ago was when times were really tough, I decided to hide it from everybody else and actually just absorb it all as myself as a business owner. This was my problem to solve, and I was going to solve it alone. And actually, I couldn't. I've learned that lesson now. There was absolutely no way I could have ever solved that problem alone. And so the problem got worse and worse and worse, and ended up with me having that horrible conversation with 10 members of staff who I now treated as friends and family, to say, look, guys, we've all got to go home, right? This isn't carrying on now. The money's run out, off we go. And it's a horrible situation to be in, caused by a very toxic client that we were working with who squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And what I was doing is I was trying to protect the team from that and trying to stop them from getting involved. The moment I told them what was happening, they told me off for not involving them in the process. They wanted to know that it wasn't going well because they wanted to find out what they could do to help, because they did care about what we were doing. And I think if you can build again that into your team, so that they're turning up to work not to just take home the paycheck at the end of the month, they're turning up because they enjoy what they're doing, they care about what they're doing, they care about the organization and how we look after customers, they care about the other members of the team. You're right, be honest with them. Maybe not the whole truth some of the time, some things you might want to hold back, but actually do confront that kind of bad news, confront that horrible stuff head on, and sit down and talk about it. It was so the beginning of well, this time last year, really, the beginning of the pandemic, not knowing what was happening. I've got a few companies, very, very small teams in each of them, but sat down with each of them on a video call and went through, look, this is the worst case scenario. This is how we're going to have to go through this, and this is what bad looks like. This is what good looks like. And the first question everyone was asking is, what can I do to help? It wasn't about, oh, well, you better go and fix it then, boss. It was about, what can we all do together to try and make this work? And so conversations then around furlough and short working and all those kind of things became really easy because people understood the problem and wanted to help solve it, rather than it just coming out of the blue, here's a letter, go home, we'll see you in a few months. We managed to have those kind of adult conversations because people cared about it.
I would absolutely agree. I used to run a small little enterprise, and I remember we were talking about we knew there was going to be a cut coming our way from our main client, and we had plan A, plan B, and plan Z. And I remember taking them through plan Z, and I said, if plan Z happens, I don't think we're all going to make it. We might not make it as an organisation or as a company, and we might not make it. All of us might not make it through. And unfortunately, plan Z had to be taken off the shelf and implemented. And it's the buy-in from the team during that period. I couldn't have asked for more. And not everyone made it, but you know, we did come out eventually stronger. But I think that honesty with the team, as much as you say, as much as you possibly can, and getting them to shape plan Z before we had to take it off the shelf. So they owned it as much as me. There's a really interesting question actually that's come in around the effect of community in a business for those. I think the split, I'm going to put it in sort of more simplistic terms than that's been submitted, but around blue collar and white collar workers. You know, there's a real split at the moment. Those who are having to go into work, those that are having to put on PPE every day, those of us that are sitting at home with our cups of tea and only have to put on PPE when we go to the supermarket, when we go to the shops. That's quite a cultural divide. How do you keep that community in your business when you've got that potential divide? How do you keep that sort of one team ethos going? Simon, I've changed it a little bit from what you said. I hope you don't mind. But Anthony, can I come to you first on that?
Yeah, this one's very personal for me because I grew up in a very blue collar family, and I did not go to university until much later in life, going in the evening and working jobs. And I can remember being dirty and dusty and coming off job sites because I worked as a construction worker is where I started. And I can remember passing people in suits and dresses on the street and how I was invisible. And I can remember just having dirt on my face and salt in my shirt. And I just remember how that felt to be invisible to a portion of the population. And when I was on the other side of that sidewalk or that pavement between my American and British, I swore I would never do that. So this isn't about PPE or pandemic. This is humanity. This is dignity. This is about respect. This is about looking at everybody in the planet and saying everybody has value and worth, regardless of what they do for a living. So the divide we can use as the person that asked that question around PPE, but the divide is between your heart and your mind. So we have to look at people and see them, not see what they wear or what they do.
Thank you. Rich.
There's an old a saying that it doesn't 100% hold true, but don't ever ask anyone to do anything you wouldn't do yourself. And I've always prided myself on rolling my sleeves up. So my life has always been behind a keyboard and writing software and a very comfortable life and cup of coffee, etc., etc. But I have through that time held other jobs. I was a caretaker in a college for a few months over a summer break just to earn some extra money. I helped clear the hall's residence down, and even up until a couple of years ago, I was helping to run a community bakery where we were raising money to then plough into sort of alternative education for kids. And you have to show everybody that you're not just some big scary detached person off to one side, and the white collar and the blue collar teams are not two different teams separately. Get them amongst each other, and foster those relationships early on. So I roll in, walk in, roll up my sleeves, get dirty, get covered in flour, just like the rest of them, right? And we'll have the conversations at that point about what's going on and things like that. One of my favorite programs on TV, when I catch it, is Undercover Boss, where you've got these guys who sit in their ivory tower who then end up on the front line and realize they're so disconnected from it. I think you have to do that. And that works at every level. It's not just about the boss. So every level of your company should know what everyone else is doing, not to the expert level that the people are doing. And we're not saying that the people can be swapped in and out. There are specialisms in each of those, and I was a rubbish baker, and I always will be. So I have my hand held all the way through it. But by being in the space, I understood what it was. I understood what the temperature was in the kitchens, and when they were moaning about it, I knew what that was. I understood what the uniform issues were when they were wearing different things, and so we changed various different aspects of it. But you have to have that connection between, and having that separation is really difficult. Right now, it's even more difficult. And to specifically answer the question about what you do right now with PPE wearing people who are out there all day and people who are very comfortable at home, I don't think there is a here, have a magic wand and this is the answer to it. But I think what you should be doing is anything that you're doing for one team, you should be doing for another. So if you are, as Antti said, if you've installed a second phone line where anyone can ring, that's open to everybody, regardless of if they're out there on the front line doing something or if they're sat at home, because they're both going through different sets of challenges. Some people are going stir crazy at home because they haven't left the same four walls for a whole week. And others are really struggling on the front line, wearing that PPE, being uncomfortable, putting themselves in danger potentially. But the struggles are still there. They're different. They might be measured in different ways, but they're still there. So if you're doing team quizzes or a wine and cheese evening or whatever it is to sort of talk to your teams, make sure you do that across the board. Give as much time on Zoom to the guys on the front line as you do to the guys who are sat at home. Because it's all about everyone feeling equal, and have those team get-togethers where it isn't just that department, it's actually intermingling amongst them, because then everyone learns a little bit about what everyone else is doing and appreciates it all a little bit more.
Thank you. I think yeah, and if you do those, I have to say a good team session that we did was guess the primary school age photos, because there's some great haircuts and it does make everyone laugh.
Deborah, send me yours.
I look exactly like me, but with a basin. Don't age, you see, Anthony, I just don't age. In terms of, there's a question here around productivity, and it's sort of saying once you get past productivity and looking at IT systems, how can you look at it more holistically across your company? Rich, I might come to you first on that one, seeing as you're our IT bod, and Anthony then come to you next, if that's okay.
Yeah, I guess this is my life, right? This is what I do day in, day out for all sorts of different businesses. I'd say 9 times out of 10, the beginning of the problem, the root cause analysis, as us techie, geeky people would call it, is very rarely the IT. It's normally the thought process that's gone around processing whatever it is, whether it's the information or whether it's a repair that's being done and tracking items through, whether it be manufacturing something. It's normally the fact that people have struggled along and created fixes for the bit that's now broken for them in their process. And normally that involves more paperwork and more people. And then someone like me comes in and says, actually, take a massive step back here. What are you trying to achieve? And what are the fewest number of steps you can take to achieve that and do it properly? And now look at what your system does, and does it work? Because actually, I've been into businesses as a software developer, going in as to go build some bespoke software, and left never writing a line of code because they had all of the tools available to them. They had everything that they needed. It just needed to be used in a different way. And so it was about the process and the mentality of people to not quick fix things, is to take that step back and look at the overarching picture. I often joke I'm a rubbish software developer from a business point of view, only because I do turn down more customers than I help, because actually they often already have what they need and don't need something expensive or shiny or whatever off to one side. But yeah, so it's not always an IT problem. Sometimes it is. Get specialists in who understand that, or involve your staff who may have seen things elsewhere or may have heard of other things and get their feedback on what it is. But normally it starts with the process issue first.
Yeah, you know, I'm a massive fan of technology, and I'll put it in very simplistic outcome-based terms. I always look at IT, and I keep our IT leadership very close on my council, because I'm always looking for how to improve the journey for the colleague and the client. Is there a digital solution that's better? How can we get information to them quicker? And sometimes, unfortunately, leaders want to do it the way, at the pace they're comfortable with. And if they don't have the propensity to want to learn new things, they're going to frustrate the IT professionals. At the same time, you have to balance the IT professionals that they don't turn in my day into their gaming console. That when I start to come out with an IT problem, they then turn it into a PlayStation, Xbox world and say, "Oh, Anthony, you can have all these things." Well, I didn't want to go to Mars yet. I'm just trying to get to the Orkney Island. So I would encourage that IT works. They're very blended into the strategy and the outcome base, but to serve people, not just do it for the purpose of bolting on another piece of technology, but what's the outcome, as we talked about in 6 degrees? What does it fit the strategy? Does it fit the outcome? Has it been research developed, and does it have a leadership component attached to it? And then how do we market to the people? Otherwise, people feel like they're always off balance with technology versus having technology really increase balance of an organization. I'm a huge fan of it, right? Without it, we'd be devastatedly antiquated.
Thank you. Right, I'm just very conscious of time, and I'm going to come back to that very first question to start with. Your one recommendation for a book and a podcast. So, Anthony, can I come to you first?
Yeah. Now listen, you know what I have to do, right, with that question.
You can't.
know
you
that
can't do your own. You can't, because everyone's going to get that. So it's a different one.
Okay.
No.
Yes.
Okay, I'll
Yes.
give you 2
Okay.
minutes, and I'll come to you in a second.
I got it. So Unleash Energy is a fantastic book. Really good.
Okay. And any podcast you recommend?
No, there's it's hard. There's so many different. No,
Yeah, there are.
no, not that comes to mind. The Roots of
Right.
Leadership, Anthony Gruppo. Sorry.
That's fair enough. Okay, Rich.
I've got nothing to plug, so I don't know what I'm going to do. No, I think the book that changed my mindset the most, actually, I already mentioned it earlier on, was Cody's 7 Habits. Now, I'm not saying it's a perfect book. I'm not saying it answers all the questions, and there's obviously follow-on and things like that. But it was one of those things where I sat there one day and realised how many things I was doing wrong because I'd never really thought about it. And actually, as I say, I've had for many years a shortened version of it to next to me on my desk, just to remind myself, especially that sharpen the saw bit. Take that time away, go do that thing. And as for a podcast, it's not actually a podcast. I'm going to cheat here. It's a Radio 4 program I've been listening to for years. I love, which is The Bottom Line with Evan Davis, and it's listening to other leaders and how they solved problems, and they're talking about big businesses and multinationals, but actually, even at the smallest level, there's always things in there that you can learn and go, actually, do you know what? That's the better way. I should be doing this.
Great, thank you. I think someone's just woken up as well. You might hear it in the background. Oh, thank you both so much. Do you know what? We've had such a good session, and we've had such great engagement. Not a single person has dropped off during the which I think is testament to both Anthony and Rich, and just how engaging and interesting it's been. So thank you so much from me, especially to Anthony, to Marsh Commercial, for supporting us on this. It's really important. You know, these are CBI's not-for-profit organisation, so it's the supports are always very much welcome. And Rich, for joining us, and I believe you're on one of our under 35 council and under 35 committee as well. So thank you very much, and we will be doing a follow-up, of which Anthony's book will be sent as a digital copy to you. and look forward to seeing you next month. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.